Thank you. Well, let's bring in our panel to discuss a bit further. Retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, Black Hawk helicopter pilot, and Battalion Commander Darren Gaub was with us this morning. Also joining us, national security analyst and author of the book Rise, Brigitte Gabriel. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Thank you.
So, Colonel, the president said yesterday that the meeting in Qatar is on. Iran continues sending messages to contradict that. The president also posted that Iran requested this meeting be held in Doha. So, you know, he sent Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner's there on the ground. Iran is saying and doubling down as of this morning as we came to air, they have no plans to talk with the U.S. delegation face to face. What's with the mixed messaging, Darren? Let's start with you.
Sure. Well, first of all, the Iranian dictators are never going to say in front of their own people of Iran that they requested a meeting with the United States, because that would signal a weakness to their own internal population, that they're willing to capitulate, even in a small measure, to the United States by requesting this meeting. Now, ultimately, what it comes down to is Iran's leadership in Tehran is going to continue to sow some confusion into everything they do in order to try to seek an advantage over, you know, what kind of advantage, who knows what that might be. But chaos and confusion is certainly something that they're in favor of. And that's just what they're going to continue to pursue. And yet we'll continue to show up at the table. In fact, I would say Trump has been more patient than I would be at this point, because I guess I know Iran all too well over decades of having to deal with them, that this is what they do. They're not really truly seeking peace. They're just seeking to delay as long as they can and probably try to influence our elections and other things.
Brigitte, the president has claimed that, you know, the Iranians, they want this meeting, that they say one thing at the negotiating table and say, you know, something completely contradictory to deliver to their base back at home. Is that what you're seeing play out right here in real time?
Yes, that's exactly what's happening, and I want to follow up on that's why the Iranians are speaking to their own base. They will come to the table, they will negotiate, but not because they are interested in peace. They are interested in dragging the process. As long as we have this current regime, and we know that there is a big division within the Iranian leadership right now, but what we do know 100% is the IRGC are still in control, and they still despise the United States. We are still the great Satan, and they're not going to want to have peace with the great Satan. We've been the great Satan since 1979. So all they're doing is they are buying time as much as they can to leading up to the midterm election, and they're hoping to buy time and mislead the United States all the way until Trump leaves office, and then they can breathe a sigh of relief. I hope that President Trump is savvy enough and surrounded by wise people enough to convince him that before he leaves office, we have got to change the regime in Iran one way or another, whether we do it or whether we allow the Israelis to do it, who actually came to the president, came to the U.S. and the beginning of the war with a plan to change the regime. That's exactly why they took out the leadership in the first day of the bombing. America didn't agree back then, but I think we're going to get to the point where the only way we're going to have peace with Iran is basically by changing those people opposing peace right now in Iran.
The president has maintained that was not part of the initial mission. It is just to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. Colonel, make no mistake, it should not be missed that we did hit them very hard over the weekend militarily, and their strikes have since stopped.
Yes, that's true. And in fact, there's been more damage done to Iran over the last few months than has ever been done since 1979. So we can't miss the positive in all of this noise that's going on right now. Now, you know, of course, that is not a desire to harm the Iranian people who actually seek peace, who want these dictators gone as much as more than anybody else does. But ultimately, the only language those people speak, those dictators speak, is force. And that's the language we're going to have to talk to them in. We'll come to the table, too, and we'll see if we can iron something out. But the question is, will that be adhered to in the first place? Like Brigitte said, talking about the IRGC, ultimately, the IRGC is making its own decisions, despite what anybody in Tehran might say. Their last orders were to keep this conflict going for as long as they could, and they're going to keep operating despite what anybody in Tehran may be saying. And that's not unexpected. That's how they operate.
Well, what the president of Iran is saying this morning, Masoud Pezeshkian, posting this: mutual understanding is a two-way street. If the American side adheres to the agreement, we will also fulfill our commitments. Our approach to unreasonable saber rattling and baseless threats is to rely on rationality and human dignity in decision making, and to defend decisively and fearlessly when it comes time to act. So much about that statement, Brigitte, struck me, but certainly the human dignity component while they're murdering their own people.
They are brilliant in messaging. I mean, this is amazing the way they can talk with a straight face like that. Look, they want the MOU. They want to enforce the MOU. The MOU basically forces Israel and Lebanon to basically stop fighting. It forces Israel to withdraw out of Lebanon. It forces Hezbollah to stay in Lebanon, despite that the Lebanese government does not want them there. But Israel did something so brilliant yesterday. You know, they went around the United States and signed their own peace understanding with Lebanon, where the Lebanese government agreed with Israel to stay in Lebanese territories to help them control Hezbollah, because the Lebanese government knows that only Israel can do that. Well, that's against the interest of Iran, and that's exactly why Iran brought the Lebanon issue into the MOU. So right now, the Iranians are demanding the enforcement of the MOU. Well, you know what? That ship has sailed, because Israel and Lebanon right now signed their own deal. They are working together. It doesn't matter what Iran wants. And that can pose a little problem to the United States, actually.
Yeah, sure could. And we'll see whether that, in fact, holds as well, because it doesn't seem even a moment goes by without some sort of back and forth and skirmish. The president is saying once again that Iran has agreed not to pursue nuclear weapons. And then, of course, this back and forth hours later, Iranian state media is suggesting this very different message. Darren, what gets done today, if anything? And it seems like as we move on, you know, they're 6-8 hours ahead of us already. Not much has gotten done. Tomorrow's supposed to be technical talking. Yet again, Iran saying we're not even going to be in the room face to face. What actually gets done at this meeting?
Very little, unfortunately, and that's just the way the game is played. This is part of how you drag it out. Say we're going to have talks, go to have talks. Guess what? Nothing comes out of those, because suddenly you realize the red line still exists. Both sides walk away with no agreements, and you come back another day, and you keep coming back each day until suddenly you realize that 3 months has gone by, and that's just how it works. And ultimately, what you're dealing with is a regime who buys into what Yasser Arafat said, which is that war is deceit, and a treaty is deception as well. The process of a treaty is deception. So they're just going to continue doing this. I wouldn't be surprised at all if by the end of the day, everybody goes home and once again, nothing meaningful has happened.
Iran announced that $6 billion of assets would be unfrozen. It's been frozen since October 7th. And apparently it's going to be, according to their accounts, again, in Iranian state-run media, it'll be made available through the Qataris, representatives there. How are the Qataris involved in this? How do those assets become unfrozen, Brigitte? And why would the U.S. tolerate it? I mean, the president has said not 10 cents would be unfrozen until the MOU becomes the standing document and that it's abided by. How will this work? How do you see it playing out?
Well, this is the cat and mouse game. You do this, and then we'll do this. If you abide by this, we will release that. And that's what's happening right now. And that's basically why we have the MOU for 60 days for this specific negotiations. The Iranians need a breather, so they need that money. And this is why they are leading the United States. You know, this pause is actually good for them because they need access to that money. The United States needs to bring the gas prices down leading up to the midterm. So they both want this cat and mouse game to work for the next 60 days. Now, the way the Qataris are involved, the Qataris have always cozied up with Iran to the chagrin of the rest of the Gulf states. They are unhappy with Qatar, and that's exactly why Qatar wasn't bombarded that much by Iran, while the rest of the Arabic countries received a lot from Iran, because the Qataris work to deal with Iran. You know, you protect us, you know, we'll work with you. So now supposedly the money is supposed to be unfrozen by the United States in the way where the Iranians buy from our farmers food so they can feed their population. Well, the Iranian people did not die, 40, 50,000 of them, so they can get corn. They didn't die for corn. The people could care less about that. The regime wants that. And if that happens, then they're going to take that food, give a little bit of to the leadership, and then sell the rest of it on the black market and take the profit from that food to finance their weaponry. That's what Iran is aiming for, and that's why they want this unfrozen asset.
Colonel, very quickly closing with you, an influx of cash. Brigitte sounds like she's nailed it here. Influx of cash to Iran, it doesn't appear to play out well any way you cut it.
No, they're not going to spend the money for the good of their people. They're going to spend the good of the money to build the IRGC and probably try to build their nuclear ambitions back in some way again as well. That's how they've operated. That's how they'll continue to operate until the regime actually changes ideology, not just names.
Colonel Darin Gaab, Brigitte Gabriel, great conversation and analysis as always. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.